Well, a big change coming next week when the Indiana Supreme Court lifts a ban that restricts the use of cameras in the courtroom. Well, this week we're taking a look at the impact with WRTV digital reporter Vic Reichart. And Vic, you know, this is a long time coming for the state.
Yeah, well, it sure is. Indiana has had a ban on courtroom cameras, near total ban, going back to the dawn of television. There have been very limited times that cameras have been allowed in Indiana courts. And with the help of digital producer Mike Hartz, we have found some of those times and have put them together for a package that we're going to show tonight.
Absolutely. Digging a little deeper, what was something, I guess, that stood out as you were, looking through the archives to kind of see how bad of, a hindrance this has been for so long? Well,
I mean, there have been so many hearings, so many courtroom trials that we would have liked to have had cameras in. I mean, the ones that leap to mind, Mike Tyson, boxer Mike Tyson, wouldn't it have been great to see, what happened in that courtroom? But of course, they were banned. They weren't allowed. The only way you could get into court generally in the past 20, 30 years has been with special permission from the Indiana Supreme Court. Well, that all changes come Monday when any judge in the state can allow cameras in their courtroom.
All right, well, let's take a look at some of the great work you've been putting in.
Your headline story tonight: woman murder suspect found, still alive, with murder weapon in her possession. Now the exclusive film and that story.
Our cameras were rolling in 1958 when police found murder suspect Connie Nicholas in her car along Fall Creek after she had downed dozens of sleeping pills. Nicholas was charged with murder in the shooting death of Eli Lilly executive Forrest Teal. Marion County Criminal Court Judge Thomas J. Faulkner made national headlines in 1959 when he allowed cameras to film her murder trial.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Minnie B. Nicholas, alias Connie Nicholas, guilty of voluntary manslaughter.
The judge sentenced Nicholas to a term of 2 to 21 years. It was the most high-profile trial in the state for nearly 2 decades.
Give me a drink, pal. Give me a drink.
In 1977, Tony Karitzis kidnapped mortgage broker Dick Hall, holding him hostage for 63 hours. Much of it was broadcast live on television. When a verdict came down, Judge Michael T. Dugan allowed cameras to capture the moment Karitzis learned his fate.
I, the defendant, Anthony G. Karitzis, not guilty by reason of...
And just a month later, our cameras were allowed inside another Marion County courtroom.
So you know nothing about it. You've read nothing and heard nothing. Okay.
Judge John B. Wilson allowed television cameras to witness the proceedings in the murder trial of Howard Willard. Willard was charged with killing Marjorie Jackson, the heiress of Standard Grocery, inside of her Spring Mill Road home.
It was such an unusual murder that it had national attention.
Unusual indeed. Millions of dollars in cash were inside Jackson's home. She had reportedly spent years withdrawing money from the bank and stashing it at her home. Eventually, word got around.
That was my first encounter with television in the courtroom.
Jim Voiles was one of Howard Willard's defense lawyers.
Channel 6 was one of the stations that I remember, and the reporter was a guy named Rick Salinger.
There are still many questions that remain unanswered in the Marjorie Jackson affair.
Judge Wilson made the decision to allow cameras to capture every aspect of the Willard trial.
I was trying to improve the entire system for everybody.
While journalists supported the move, many others were not happy.
They were kind of disruptive in terms of the cameraman. Our Chief Justice, Richard Given, saw this on television and did not like it, and the next day issued an edict to 92 counties that there would not be a television camera in the courtroom. And that set the tone.
Justice Given closed the chapter on cameras in Indiana courtrooms, and it remained that way until a new Chief Justice took over in 1987.
I don't get the impression that what they've done in Kentucky has been burdensome or has resulted in a lower quality of justice.
Chief Justice Randall T. Shepard had a unique perspective on cameras in the courtroom, thanks to televised court proceedings in neighboring Kentucky. Shepard pushed for testing courtroom cameras in Indiana.
I would like to see something more scientific. I'd like to have a feeling that I'd gone through something of a more formal self-education from the practitioner's point of view.
The Indiana Supreme Court held its first courtroom camera test in Evansville in 1996.
All right.
But a decade would pass before Indiana would see an official pilot program.
State, ready to go?
In 2006, the Indiana Supreme Court decided to do a pilot project for 1 year and a half.
Dan Byron began working as general counsel for the Indiana Broadcasters Association in the mid-90s. His goal was getting cameras into the courtrooms. Byron says the pilot program was a major step forward, but there was a catch.
They required all parties to any litigation that might be filmed to agree in writing to the request. We could never get a case where all the parties would agree to that. We had no jury trials. We had one court trial, and we had 6 proceedings in a year and a half. So the prohibition continued.
That is until a second pilot program began in 2021, allowing cameras in 5 state courts. By then, Indiana was among the last states still banning courtroom cameras.
Some amazing work there.
Thank you.
Well, we'll have more stories about cameras in the courtroom, but Vic, what's next?
So we're going to have another story on a courtroom sketch artist who's talking about her experience over the years covering the different trials. And you know, sketch artists are going to be pretty much out of business, right, with cameras. So she talks about that too. And we sat down with Indiana Supreme Court Chief Justice Loretta Rush, who has some really great insight into why it's time to allow cameras in Indiana courts.
All righty, some amazing work there.
Thank you.
Love to see it. Thank
Thanks.
you so much.